After 40 years of marriage, I thought my wife, Josie, and I had settled into a comfortable life. We raised 2 wonderful kids, Christine and Leo, and now, in our retirement years, we enjoyed the fruits of our labor. I had some health issues, mostly heart problems, but I stayed active with my golf games. Josie, always full of energy, kept our house in top shape. Despite the ups and downs we'd faced, things seemed fine. Or so I thought. But something changed. Josie, once content with our slower pace of life, began to want more. I didn't notice it at first. I assumed we'd adapted to my health limitations and that she was as satisfied as I was with our routine. Turns out, I was wrong. Her dissatisfaction went unnoticed by me, and it led to a distance between us that I never saw coming. One day, after a rainstorm canceled my usual golf game, I headed home earlier than expected. I didn't call Josie to let her know I was on my way back. I figured I'd surprise her. But the surprise was on me. When I walked into the house, I found her standing in our living room, wearing a pink silk robe, with a younger man by her side. I stood frozen in place, trying to process what I was seeing. Josie, still looking great for her 59 years, was laughing with this guy who couldn't have been older than 30. It hit me hard. Josie tried to kiss me hello, but I stepped back in disgust. "Are you out of your mind, Josie? I'd rather not know where your mouth's been, though I can guess." She looked at me, startled, and quickly introduced the man. His name was Luke, tall, muscular, and definitely out of my league when it came to looks. He even had the nerve to put a hand on my shoulder as if we were friends. "Nice to meet you," he said, flashing a smug grin. "Josie's told me all about you." I couldn't believe it. Here was this guy, half my age, standing in my house, treating me like I was the one in the wrong. I clenched my fists but kept my cool. "Luke, get out of my house. If I ever see you here again, I won't hesitate to do something about it." Luke's grin vanished, and he quickly left. But Josie, she didn't seem all that bothered. She just followed me into our bedroom, acting as if I'd overreacted. "That was rude," she said, crossing her arms. "Rude?" I snapped. "I walk in on you with some guy you're clearly sleeping with, and I'm the one who's rude?" She tried to soften her tone and reached out to touch my shoulder, but I stepped away. "I'm sorry, Ray," she said. "What we had was nice, but it wasn't enough for me anymore." "Enough? You could have talked to me. Where did you even find this guy?" "He's a friend of Marjorie's. She wasn't interested in him, so she gave me his number." "He's using you, Josie. Can't you see that?" "Maybe," she admitted, "but I'm using him too. So what's the difference?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "How long has this been going on?" "A few months. He comes over when you're at golf." "It doesn't affect you, Ray. You get your time, and I get mine." I stood there, stunned, realizing why she'd started changing the sheets every Saturday. I was furious. "I'm done with this. I'll give up golf if I have to." "Ray, be smart. You need your golf. This works for both of us. Maybe for you, Josie, but not for me." And with that, I walked away, knowing our marriage was never going to be the same again. The next day was the 4th of July, a holiday our family always celebrated together. I had to set aside my anger because everyone was coming over. I fired up the grill, prepping marinated chicken, burgers, and hot dogs for the kids. Friends and family gathered like they always did, and on the surface, everything looked normal. Josie was all smiles, laughing and chatting with everyone as if nothing had happened. I couldn't understand how she could act so carefree, knowing what she was doing behind my back. The thought crossed my mind, maybe I should try to forgive her, just for the sake of our long history together. But deep down, I knew things weren't that simple. As the day wound down and most of the guests left, I excused myself for a nap. I'd been up early to prepare, and I just wanted some peace. I laid down, hoping to clear my head before the evening fireworks. When I woke up, the house was quiet, but not for long. As I made my way to the living room, I noticed the atmosphere was tense. My daughter Christine, her husband Eric, my son Leo, and his wife Rebecca were all sitting around the dining room table. Josie was at the far end with my granddaughters, Julia and Allison. Something was off. Christine was the first to speak. "Dad, we need to talk about Mom." I glanced at Josie, who sat there with an unreadable expression. I was immediately on guard. What about her? She told us about Luke, Christine said bluntly, and the room fell into a heavy silence. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She told them. She told you? I repeated, stunned. Yes, Dad, Christine said, not meeting my eyes. She told us everything. About Luke, about your issues. I stared at Josie, furious. My issues? This doesn't concern any of you. But it concerns Mom's happiness, Christine replied, her voice soft but firm. Are you unhappy? I asked Josie directly, feeling like I was in some kind of twisted dream. I am happy, Ray, she said calmly. Please don't doubt that. Christine jumped in again. But Mom has needs, and well, you can't meet them anymore. Isn't that true? I could barely process what was happening. So I'm selfish for not accepting this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We're not saying that, Dad, Christine said. We're just saying maybe it's time to support Mom in taking care of things quietly. Since you can't. I looked around the table, searching for some sign of support. Do you all agree with this? I asked, my voice breaking a little. The silence that followed was worse than any answer they could have given me. Leo was the first to speak. It'll help Mom, he said, avoiding my gaze. Eric chimed in next. I don't see it being a big problem. I couldn't believe it. I turned to Rebecca, who had been silent the entire time. Rebecca, what about you? She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Well, as long as she's discreet, she said quietly. That was it. My own family was telling me to accept my wife's affair, to make peace with being replaced. I felt older than I ever had, like a relic from a different time. I turned to my granddaughters, hoping maybe they'd see things differently. What about you girls? Julia, the oldest, spoke up. Grandpa, we really shouldn't be involved. You're almost adults, I said, desperate for some connection. I'm sure you have opinions. Julia and Allison exchanged nervous glances before Julia answered. A lot of our friends are fine with their partners seeing other people. It's just sex, Grandpa. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had expected this from Josie, maybe even from the others, but hearing it from my granddaughter was too much. I stood there, my family united in their support for Josie's betrayal, and I felt more alone than I ever had before. That was the moment I realized I couldn't fight this anymore. That's it, Josephine. Majority rules. You get what you want. I said it so calmly, even though my insides were screaming. Josie's face lit up with relief, and she asked, Can I tell Luke you were joking about, eliminating him? Sure, I muttered, already walking away. I'm going for a drive. As I left the house, I heard the laughter and cheers behind me, my family celebrating the fireworks while I was about to head into the darkest night of my life. I didn't stay to watch the fireworks that night. I couldn't. Instead, I drove to a quiet hill just outside of town, the kind of place you go when you need to think. From up there, I could see the city lights flicker below me, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the booms of the fireworks my family was enjoying without me. I sat in my car, staring at the skyline, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. The betrayal cut deep. It wasn't just Josie's affair with Luke, that was bad enough on its own, but the way my own family had rallied around her, supporting her choices as if they were normal, even acceptable. They treated me like I was the unreasonable one for not going along with it, for not just quietly stepping aside while another man took my place. The thought of it burned inside me. I'd spent my entire adult life putting my family first. I worked hard, made sacrifices, and did everything I could to give them a good life. And now, in my retirement, I was the one being cast aside, like I didn't matter anymore. It was like all those years of loyalty and dedication meant nothing. When I finally returned home, it was late, well past midnight. The house was quiet, with just Christine's car still in the driveway. I wasn't surprised. She was always the one to stay behind, the one who thought she could play peacemaker. As I walked through the door, Josie was waiting for me, standing in the hallway with a worried look on her face. Where have you been? I was so worried, she said, her voice soft, like she hadn't just spent the night celebrating with her lover in mind. I was out, I said coldly, walking past her without another word. Christine was sitting on the sofa, watching me carefully. Dad, why didn't you answer your phone? She asked, like I owed them some explanation. I turned it off, I said, not bothering to hide the bitterness in my voice. "And I didn't come home because I didn't want to be here when your mom's friend was around." Josie flinched at that, but still tried to keep her calm. "Everything was cleaned up long before you got back, Ray," she said. "There was no reason for you to stay out all day." "I told you before, Josie," I said, turning to face her. "I won't be here when he is. Not ever." With that, I headed to my bedroom, expecting one of them to follow, but no one did. I shut the door and sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. I knew that Josie didn't see this affair the way I did. She didn't think she was doing anything wrong, at least, not anything worth ending our marriage over. She believed we could just keep living like this, that I'd eventually accept it, move on, and everything would be fine. But that wasn't possible for me. I couldn't just accept being replaced, even if it was just for a few hours a week. It didn't matter if she said she still loved me. Love didn't work like that, not after 40 years of marriage. The next weekend was more of the same. I went to my usual Saturday golf game, knowing exactly what was happening back at the house. Josie wasn't even hiding it anymore. Luke would come over while I was gone, they'd have their little affair, and by the time I got home, everything would be cleaned up, just like she said. It was their routine now. This time, though, I stayed out longer than usual. I didn't rush back home like I normally would. By the time I finally walked through the door, it was late. Nearly 11 p.m. Josie greeted me with a warm smile and a kiss on the cheek, as if everything was perfectly normal. "Why don't you change and relax? Then you can tell me about your day," she said in a sweet voice, almost like we were newlyweds again. I just nodded, not saying a word, and went to our bedroom to change. As I did, I thought about how things had come to this, how she could stand there, acting like everything was fine, when she'd been with another man just hours before. I wasn't stupid. I knew what was going on. When I came back out, Christine was still there, sitting in the living room. She looked like she was waiting for something, waiting for me to speak. Finally, she stood up and walked over to me. "Dad, I know this is hard for you," she said, her voice soft. "But I just want to say how amazing it is that you're supporting Mom through all of this. It's really helped her." I stared at her, shocked. "Supporting her?" I asked, incredulous. "You think I'm letting this happen?" Christine looked confused. "Well, yeah, I mean you're not stopping it, so that must mean you're okay with it, right?" That was it. The weight of everything hit me all at once. They thought I'd accepted this, that I'd just given my blessing to Josie's affair like it was no big deal. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. They truly believed that I was okay with it. I looked at Christine, my voice heavy with resignation. "Christine, this is the last time we're talking about this." "The last?" She blinked, taken aback by the firmness in my voice. "Of course, Dad," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to upset you. I'll tell everyone." Without another word, she kissed me on the cheek and left, leaving me standing there, feeling more alone than ever. Josie came in a few minutes later with a glass of water, still acting like nothing was wrong, like this was our new normal. I drank the water in silence, watching her move around the room, wondering how long I could keep up this charade before something broke. For months, I went through the motions, pretending that everything was fine. Josie continued seeing Luke, and I kept my routine of golfing on Saturdays and filling my time with distractions like movies or trying new hobbies. At home, Josie and I kept up appearances, having dinner together, engaging in light conversation, but the warmth was gone. We weren't close anymore, not like we used to be. I could feel it slipping away, our connection, the love that had kept us together for over 4 decades. Josie was too wrapped up in her affair to notice, or maybe she did notice, and just didn't care anymore. She thought that because I wasn't making a fuss, I was fine with it. She never brought up Luke, and neither did I, but the weight of it was always there, hanging between us. As Thanksgiving approached, I hoped it would be a chance to enjoy a family holiday without any drama. For once, I was looking forward to a normal day with everyone together. But I should have known better. I was sitting in my recliner, reading the paper, when Christine's voice rang through the house. "Mom, Luke's here," she called from the front door. I froze. I hadn't been expecting this, and the sound of his name sent a wave of anger through me. Luke was here. For Thanksgiving. I put the paper down and stood up, feeling my hands tighten into fists. Josie came into the room with a calm smile on her face, like this was perfectly normal. What the hell is he doing here? I demanded, glaring at her. I invited him, she said simply, as if that explained everything. He doesn't have family in town, and I didn't want him to be alone. Are you kidding me? I could feel the anger rising in my chest. I told you I wouldn't be here when he is. That's why I'm never around on Saturdays. It's just dinner, Ray, she said coolly. There's nothing going on today. I expect you to behave. I couldn't believe it. She was standing there, telling me to behave in my own house, on Thanksgiving, while she invited the man she was sleeping with to join us. Before I could say anything else, she turned and walked to the door to greet Luke, as though everything was normal. She led him into the living room, introducing him to the rest of the family, like he was some long-lost friend they should all be happy to see. I couldn't stand it. I turned and left the room, heading straight for the garage. I could hear the laughter and voices behind me, but it felt like they were miles away. All I could think about was how little I mattered to them. My own wife had invited her lover to Thanksgiving, and no one seemed to care how I felt about it. I backed my car out of the driveway and drove off without looking back. I didn't have a plan, just the overwhelming need to get out of there. I ended up at a Denny's, sitting in a booth alone, eating a sad Thanksgiving dinner while my family, and Luke, enjoyed the holiday without me. When I finally made it back home late that night, the house was quiet. I could tell they were all asleep, so I went straight to bed, not wanting to face any of them. Josie didn't say a word when I climbed into bed, though I could feel her eyes on me. Maybe she was waiting for me to say something, to apologize for leaving. But I didn't. The days dragged on after that. Our marriage, already on life support, felt like it was fading away completely. We were living more like roommates than husband and wife. Josie still seemed to care for me in some ways. She'd ask how my day was or try to show affection, but it wasn't enough. Every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal, the way she had replaced me with someone younger, someone more exciting in her eyes. Then came Christmas Eve. We had our family traditions, of course, but Josie mentioned needing to go out for some last-minute shopping. I didn't say a word, but I knew exactly where she was going. She didn't need to buy anything. We'd done our shopping weeks ago. I knew she was off to meet Luke. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. I watched her leave, wondering if she'd ever come clean, admit what she was doing, or if she would just keep pretending everything was normal. But no words were needed. I could see it in her face, in the way she moved, how her excitement wasn't about Christmas, but about seeing him. By New Year's Eve, I had stopped caring altogether. We kissed at midnight, the way we always did, but the passion was long gone. I could feel her disappointment, but it wasn't something I could fix. The next day, she called Luke to wish him a Happy New Year, and I was left to wonder if this was just the way things would be from now on. Valentine's Day rolled around, and I made reservations at a nice seafood restaurant, hoping for a fresh start. Josie seemed excited, thinking we might rekindle what we had lost. But I had my suspicions that she wouldn't let the day pass without seeing Luke. Sure enough, I left work early and parked at the end of our street, watching the house. It wasn't long before Luke showed up, parking his car a few houses down like he always did. Josie let him in, and they disappeared inside together. I didn't need to follow them to know what was happening. It was their private Valentine's celebration, and I was just an afterthought. By the time we sat down for dinner that night, any hope I had for rekindling our relationship was gone. Josie tried to act like everything was fine, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. Easter came and went in much the same way as the previous holidays. Our family gathered at the house, hiding plastic eggs for the grandkids and laughing together as if nothing had changed. I played my part, pretending to be present, but the truth was I had checked out long before. Josie didn't invite Luke this time. Maybe she learned from the Thanksgiving disaster, but I knew she was still seeing him. She just kept it quieter, making sure not to rub it in my face during family events. As the day wound down, I excused myself to lie down, claiming I was tired. That part was true, but it wasn't just physical exhaustion. I was drained emotionally, worn out by pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I opened the window in my room, letting in the cool spring breeze, and that's when I overheard Josie and Christine talking outside. "So, how's Luke doing?" Christine asked, her voice low, but not low enough that I couldn't hear. "Sure, not so loud," Josie hissed. "I don't want your father to hear." Okay, Christine said, dropping her voice a bit. I just can't believe my mom has a boyfriend who's 10 years younger than me. Josie chuckled. He's not my boyfriend, Christine. He's just, you know. Mom, you sleep with him 2 or 3 times a week, and you go out to dinner with him. He's your boyfriend whether you want to call him that or not. There was a pause, then Josie sighed. Fine. Okay, he's my boyfriend. But I just want to be considerate of your father's feelings. Mom, I love Dad, but let's be honest. He's old, and you're still young. You deserve this. He's only 5 years older than me, Josie said defensively. In actual age, yeah. But you're active, and he can barely get through the day without a nap. You deserve to be happy. Does everyone else agree with this? Josie asked quietly. Leo and Eric think it's fine. They agree you should meet your needs since Dad can't anymore. Rebecca's the only one who thinks it's wrong, but she doesn't want to hurt Dad, so she won't say anything. What Dad doesn't know won't hurt him, Josie finished, with an air of finality. Lying there, listening to that conversation, was the final nail in the coffin. I had suspected for a long time that the family supported Josie's affair, but hearing it confirmed like that, it broke something inside me. My wife, my children, my son-in-law, they all thought this was okay. They had all abandoned me, just as much as Josie had. From that moment on, I knew I couldn't stay. I'd held back before, thinking I could somehow salvage what was left of my marriage, of my family. But there was nothing left to save. The love I had for them, the love that had kept me here, even through all of this, it was gone. I was done. Mother's Day came, and as was our family tradition, the kids took Josie out to brunch at a fancy restaurant. I didn't go. I hadn't gone to Mother's Day in years, and Josie didn't come to Father's Day, either. It was just how we did things. But something told me this year would be different, so I drove to the restaurant after they'd left, hoping I was wrong. As soon as I pulled into the parking lot, I saw it, Luke's car, tucked away in a corner spot. He'd been invited. Maybe Josie or Christine had asked him to join them, knowing I wouldn't be there. They had made him part of the family, just like that. The anger I felt was overwhelming, but I didn't act on it. Instead, I drove home, grabbed my golf clubs, and headed to the local course. I spent hours hitting ball after ball, burning off my rage. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. Josie greeted me like always, but I barely responded. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I had other plans. The next few months passed by in a blur, with Josie continuing her affair and me going through the motions of our marriage. I stopped caring about what she did or when she saw Luke. All I could focus on was my own future, what I would do when I finally walked away. The final straw came on the 4th of July, exactly 1 year after I'd discovered Josie's affair. The family gathered for our usual barbecue, and I made sure to be visible, active, playing the role of the tired old man everyone expected me to be. I pretended to be worn out by the time the fireworks started, declining to go with them. I knew Josie was planning something. She'd asked multiple times if I was sure I didn't want to come, and I could tell she was hoping I'd say yes. She wanted to sneak Luke into the celebration again. After they left, I watched from the window as Josie drove off with Christine and the grandkids. I knew she was headed to meet Luke before the fireworks, and I realized there was nothing left for me here. Later that night, after the family returned, they didn't notice anything was wrong. They gathered around the table, chatting about the day. Josie even sent Leo to check on me, but when he found my wedding ring and the flash drive on the bed, he knew something was wrong. Josie rushed to the bedroom, and when she saw the empty bed, she knew it too. They played the video on the flash drive. In it, I explained everything. I told them I was leaving, and I wasn't coming back. I'd taken most of our money, but left Josie enough to live comfortably. $400,000 and the house. I wasn't going to leave her with nothing. But I wasn't going to spend my final years in misery, either. The video ended with me introducing Deborah, a woman I'd been seeing for months. She'd known all about Josie's affair, and we had grown close. She was coming with me to start a new life, far away from the family that had betrayed me. Josie cried when the video ended, but it was too late for tears. I was gone, and I wasn't coming back. I don't know what the future holds for them, whether Josie will stay with Luke, or whether Christine's marriage will survive. But I do know this. For the first time in a long time, I'm free. And that's all that matters. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.